and subscription video content. Titles like By Design, The God Who Speaks, and Asbury Revival, Desperate for More. You'll also find video versions of AFR programs. Visit afa.net and click on Streaming. Welcome to Today's Issues, offering a Christian response to the issues of the day. Here's your host, Tim Wildman, President of the American Family Association.
Hey, good morning, everybody, and welcome to Today's Issues on the American Family Radio Network. Today is Tuesday, April the 16th, 2024. Again, we thank you for listening to AFR. And joining me in studio is Wesley Wildman. Good morning, Wesley.
Good morning.
And Christopher Woodward. Good morning, Chris.
I just realized I'm wearing the same shirt as Wesley.
Hey, we are wearing the same
Oh, yeah, I
shirt.
just realized. You didn't text each other this morning?
No, not today.
Find out
today.
what you're wearing?
Usually we do that on Mondays, but
Oh. Well, any
But
day.
it's a Tuesday, so.
Ray Pritchard, good morning, Brother Ray.
Hey, Tim, how you doing this morning?
Doing well. You got you don't have the same shirt. We all got blue on.
I got this powder blue shirt on. I've been wearing it the last couple of days, and I go down and get my treatment early in the morning, and then it's just easy to get on and off. So yeah, it's blue day.
Hey, you know what I've noticed? I probably shouldn't even talk about this, but I'm going to anyway. You know what I've noticed about people who hit their 70s, and you're not there yet, are you, Ray?
Oh, I am. I'm 71, Tim.
Okay, well,
whatever you're saying, it's
all right, I'm
true
gonna
of
make
me.
I'm gonna make a general observation. I'm not talking about anybody in particular, but they wear the. I've noticed some people in the 70s
Yes.
and 80s. They wear the
Yes.
same clothes 4 days in a
Yes.
row.
Yes.
You know what? You know what I'm talking about.
This is my second day in a row.
Okay. Okay.
it ain't dirty.
Well, we
Well,
all
these
started-
people I'm talking about don't know they're doing it.
Well, that's true. They have other problems, right? You know?
So they say if it's broke, don't fix it. If
That's
it's,
right.
What is it if you?
I don't
if
know.
it's-
There was
You've
one.
worn it
There was
twice,
one
wear it a
fella I
third time.
knew. We were on
That's right.
vacation and with them, and he wore the same thing like 3 days in a row. But I didn't have the heart to go tell
really,
him.
what are you going to say to
I
him?
know.
right?
Hey, dude, trying to change
Hey,
clothes.
buddy.
Don't you got some other clothes you can wear?
You got a stain. You got a stain down there. Maybe want to do something about that. I don't know. Oh,
All right.
man.
So anyway, listen, I'm 61, but if I hit that point, or I give y'all full permission to say,
Well, you say that now.
it's time to change
Say
clothes.
that.
Yeah,
Okay,
you say it now, right?
it's Thursday. It's time to put on. It's time to put on a new sweater.
Hey, back in 2021 when we all had COVID at our
Right.
house, I
Right.
probably went a solid week with
Yeah,
maybe two
but
shirts.
you're not proud of it.
Well, yeah. Nobody saw
All
it.
right,
He's not embarrassed of it.
he's not
though.
embarrassed of it either.
Just
So,
a fact.
Yeah.
all right, Alex McFarland, Dr. Alex McFarland, will be in studio with us in just a few minutes here on American Family Radio. He's in town. He's in Tupelo today from his home state of North Carolina. And then Tony Perkins, president of the Family Research Council, will be with us next hour to talk about the situation in Israel. And Tony is, I'm not sure if he's in D.C. or he's in Baton Rouge, but we'll find out a little bit later. But as always, we thank you for joining us. Wesley, tell folks if they want to engage the show on that their internet, what Ed calls out their internet, what they need to do.
Yes, you can go to afr.net. That's afr.net, and we are streaming our audio there live. Also, you can go to our YouTube channel, which is Today's Issues Live, or our Facebook page. I would encourage you to, at some point, if you've got a smart device, whether that's an iPad or an iPhone, to download the AFR app, because there's just so much more there between our radio program that you're listening to now, our talk show, but we also have all of our radio programs archived there, in addition to our music station. We have a music station that's only on the app that you can't get anywhere else. So if you're needing some inspirational music, Christian music, that is, Christian
Insurrectional music. We don't promote
We're
insurrectional
getting
music.
to that.
Huh?
We're getting to that.
that
That's
what
part
you
of
said?
that's part of the news.
Oh, I thought You said inspirational.
Inspiration.
Music. Okay, my bad.
And then I made sure to add, because we are a Christian ministry that is Christian inspirational music.
Yeah, what other kind of inspirational music is there?
Well, don't get me started,
I won't.
because I may say something I shouldn't say.
We don't want
On
that.
live radio.
We don't want that. As long as you change clothes every day, I'm good.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. All right, Chris. What's the first thing happening in the world?
Yeah, we need to be continuing to pray for the peace of Jerusalem, and I say that based on two things I have here, and I'll share the links in a moment. Let's begin with this one. It's a Daily Mail article. Other news outlets have similar reports. Israel's top general says Israel will respond to that drone and missile attack from Iran over the weekend. This is despite Western calls for Israel to, quote, take the win and not respond to being bombarded with drones and missiles. Meanwhile, in a more recent article from Daily Mail, Iran is now threatening to use more weapons, different stuff, more damaging, catastrophic type weapons of mass destruction there on Israel, should Israel respond to Iran's attack from over the weekend. A lot of back and forth there between the two nations.
Yeah, and this is one of the things we're going to talk to Tony Perkins about, because he's got his ear to the ground, so to speak, in Washington, D.C. He knows what some of our leaders and our American, politicians are thinking and understanding about this. And Tony's in direct contact with a lot of leaders in Israel as well, so we'll talk to him about that. All right. I wasn't here yesterday. I know this. You guys talked about this, and you weren't on the program yesterday, but that the drone barrage, if you will, from Iran. Do we know how many drones they sent over there?
I was in the hundreds.
I thought it was
I'll look it up.
200.
200?
I think it was 200.
I don't know if we know exactly. But anyway, 99% of them were shot down, right?
Right. I mean, this whole thing, Tim, I don't understand what Iran was doing. Okay, this is like Pearl Harbor in reverse. This is not a sneak attack.
Right.
They announce,
right.
The Iranians announce, we have launched.
Right.
Okay, giving the Israelis hours to prepare, right? Plus the British, plus the Americans, plus the Jordanians.
Right.
Plus, evidently, a lot of their drones just didn't make it.
Right.
They weren't even shot down. They just didn't make
right.
it. So, I mean, what was the military purpose of this? They had to know that it was going to fail.
Yeah.
They announced it in advance. So it was a lot of sound and fury.
Yeah.
I mean, did Israel win? Yes, they won. 99% of the stuff didn't get through, and what little got through caused basically no damage. So explain to me, Tim, what were the Iranians, even to go back, what were the Iranians thinking in
I'm just going to make a guess here, but my best educated guess on this. All right. Israel, now we could go back and forth for, if we wanted to, story after story, decades about tit for tat, okay?
Right.
Now, here's the situation as I understand it. Israel, you remember a couple of weeks ago, Israel sent rockets or shot at and killed some top Iranian officials that were in Syria, in Damascus. In fact, you remember that?
Right. At the embassy, right? Wasn't it?
It was Iranian territory in Syria. For sure.
Right. So,
right.
After that happened, and the reason Israel did that is because the world knows that Iran is funding the attacks by Hamas and Hezbollah, two terrorist organizations, against Israel. So Israel sees Iran, and the whole world knows this, that Iran is behind. Okay, let me back up just a minute here. Iran hates Israel for religious reasons. Iran is a Shia fundamentalist run. The Ayatollahs, okay, we all know Ayatollah Khomeini. Everybody remember that from the hostage days in the 70s. The Ayatollahs, the religious leaders, the Muslim, they run the government, basically, in Iran. They hate the Jews and the Christians, but they hate the Jews for religious reasons, primarily. This isn't about land, okay, or control of oil fields or something like that. This is about the mullahs in Iran they say America's the great Satan, Israel's the little Satan. So anyway, back to my retaliation. That the Israel took out the Iranian leaders, military leaders, whatever you want to call them, a couple of weeks ago, 10 days ago or so. Iran promised at that time, we will pay you back. We're going to get back at you. This is their answer to that. Is this drone attack, these drones attacking Israel, which failed miserably in terms of.
Do you not think they had to have known that they were going to fail?
I think they did. I
think just did it.
I think they did. Again, we're guessing and speculating here, but I think they did. And this is the reason. I think Iran didn't really expect to make any serious damage or casualties.
But to appease the people that give them money.
They wanted street cred with their fellow Israeli haters and the world leaders. They wanted to say, well, look, Iran's a player, man. They're hitting back at Israel.
Sure.
They didn't just so. It failed miserably. Thank God, nobody was killed. So, what happens next? That's the big question.
Yeah.
What happens next, and what does that do to the security and the peace in the Middle East? We don't know yet. Hey, joining us in studio is Alex McFarland, Dr. Alex McFarland.
Wait, you said in the studio?
He's in the studio, sitting right here 2 feet from me.
What?
I don't think he has COVID. You don't have COVID or anything, do
No,
you?
sir.
Strep or nothing like that?
Clothed, healthy, happy, and holy.
Amen,
Amen.
brother. Amen.
As far as I'm aware.
What do you think about? What do you think about what you heard Ray ask me the question? What do you think about what I just said?
Well, you're right on the money, and you mentioned the Ayatollah and the late '70s, and I think about SDI and the Reagan years. You remember, and that Iron Dome. I'm old enough. I remember when Reagan talked about the Strategic Defense Initiative and computer-guided missiles that could take out missiles. People made fun of that, but
That's what saved Israel.
Oh, it is. The Iron Dome, which was developed along with U.S. intel 35, 40 years ago and was operated over the weekend with the help of the USA, that saved Israel. But, somebody called me Saturday afternoon. Iran was in the news. They said, what's Iran doing? I said, committing suicide. Because in the words of the inimitable Indiana Jones, you don't take a knife to a gunfight. And Iran, like you say, Tim, they might have looked like a player on the world stage. Hey, we're
Right,
big.
right.
But you attack Israel at your own peril.
Yeah.
What do you think Israel? I guess what do you think they'll do now?
Well, let me say, in terms of Christian ethics and really the Western world and history itself, nations and individuals have the right to self-defense. And, Friday when President Biden was asked, what would you say if Iran was contemplating attacking Israel? And Biden said, don't. On the one hand, I appreciate that. But on the other hand, the Biden White House is mandating that Israel not counter-strike. Basically, the whole wide world, at least the left-leaning world, doesn't want Israel to have a right that nations have always had from time immemorial, the right to self-defense.
Yeah. I know if the U.S., Ray, had been bombarded with drones, whether they were successful or not, but they were offensive, weapons-oriented drones from Cuba,
an attacking nation,
and they had sent hundreds into Miami and Fort Lauderdale and were unleashing them. Do you think American people would go, you know what, just don't do anything back, or don't
Ceasefire.
Wait,
we haven't started
right.
yet.
Right. What do you? I mean, do you see any?
No, we would answer with overwhelming force.
Right.
Overwhelming. The problem here is what is my original question. What in the world was Iran thinking in signaling, starting the attack, and saying, "Hey, we are attacking you,"
right.
giving them hours to get ready? It's almost nonsensical. I can only think of two things to add to what.
Maybe they didn't want it. Maybe they didn't want to cause a lot of damage because then Israel would unleash massive weapons at them. I don't know. Go ahead. Go ahead, Ray.
Oh, I can think of two things. Number one, Perhaps they wanted to test Israel's missile defense system, in which case Israel passed with flying colors. The other thing, which is more interesting to me, is that by doing this, they may have to some degree, I'm sure to some degree they did deplete the Israeli defense system that now has to be replenished, right? The Iron Dome, because nobody has an unlimited supply of missiles. So I can't believe that I can't believe Iran wants to get into a shooting war with Israel.
Yeah.
That, as Alex said, that's suicide.
Yeah. Well, and then you've got the other countries in the region. You know, you have in order for Iran to attack Israel, or vice versa, Israel to attack Iran, you've got to go over Iraq and Jordan. And maybe Syria.
Yeah.
So the Jordanians, you know, they don't. I heard that they, of course, they border Israel, and they have a good relationship with Israel. They don't want war with Israel. They don't like what's going on in Gaza because they're Arabs. But at the same time, they don't want war with Israel. So I heard that they shot down some of these, or at least allowed the U.S. to and Israel to over Jordanian airspace. Well, anyway, it's a very tenuous situation in the Middle East. Of course, you can almost say that any day in history.
Do you think that,
Right.
you know, of course, none of us can understand the esoteric side of somebody else's mind, but why would Iran attack Israel? Some eschatological death wish, you know, and I know this is weird, but, you know, the book by Samuel Huntington, The Clash of Civilizations, I mean, we Westerners have to work hard to try to understand the Islamic mindset.
Right.
Yeah.
But it may be just out of some perverse desire to ignite World War III.
You know what? What happened with Iran? Because they were back in the 70s. They were going Western.
Oh yeah.
And then the Ayatollahs took over, and
You remember the Shah of Iran
Yes.
was. And Tim, you know, I remember. I guess I was probably in junior high way back then, and it seems like Islam and the Middle Eastern world has been in the news literally every day since 1978, 79. But I remember the Shah had done much to westernize Iran. And there are pictures online of Iran in like 1973, and I mean, it looks like a modern American city.
I know.
You've seen those photographs.
And then they had the revolution with the Ayatollah Khomeini, and they took over. That's when they took our hostages.
You remember that?
Everybody remembers that. That was
Terry Waite and all those guys. Do you remember that?
Yes, and that led that launched Ted Koppel's career, basically.
It did it.
With Nightline every night. Remember that? But you remember also Jimmy Carter sent the Marines to try to rescue the hostages, and then they crashed in the desert. You remember that? Helicopters?
I remember that. And do you remember, and I've told this story on today's issues several years ago, but I remember I was in 9th grade English, and my teachers were, Reagan was running for president. And several of my teachers, I remember an English teacher I had, a social studies teacher, they were like, oh, if Reagan gets elected, oh, that warmonger. They
have World War III.
Ronnie Reagan. Now, I'll never forget this debate. And they said, you know, Mr. Carter, if you get reelected, you know, what are we going to do? And I'll never forget. He said, well, if we could just sit down and talk. And it was very much a Neville Chamberlain kind of posture. These are good folks. We're good folks. If we could just sit around. They said, well, Governor Reagan, if you get elected. And he looked into the camera. He said, you listen to me, Mr. Ayatollah. I will mop the floor with you. And do you remember January of 81, Reagan takes the oath of office?
Right.
That afternoon,
The hostages.
surprise, the hostages were coming out.
Yeah, the hostages. Yeah. They Jimmy Carter couldn't handle it, or didn't handle it well. And
I'll never forget, there was a headline about Carter, and it said blinkmanship, not statesmanship.
Oh.
Blink, as in looking.
He blinks.
Now, and I realize this tough talk and peace through strength makes a lot of people nervous.
Yeah.
But in this world, and that's why I often refer to that book by Samuel Huntington, and it came out before 9/11, and it almost predicted 9/11, that if America thinks appeasement and just good faith agreements are going to keep peace in the world.
Let me ask you this,
It's not true.
Alex. You got to check out here in about 3 or 4 minutes, right?
Nope. I'm
Are you
free
here?
till
Are you free? Okay.
exploring
Well, I
the
have
word.
a question for you. Then you guys, okay. We got that thing for Buddy Smith coming up.
Yes, sir. We
the
do.
luncheon. And Buddy
In the board meeting.
in the board meeting.
In a board
so.
meeting.
All right. So, and then any of you guys can comment on this, but we'll start with Alex here since he's our guest in studio. I'll tell Alex and then Ray. Okay, how do we process or separate or analyze or our position on Israel? My position as Christians, as American Christians, because if this were not Israel, if this were Indonesia at war with the Philippines, for example, most Americans would go, that ain't our fight. Okay, that we don't have anything to do with that. Okay, now with Israel, we have a different attitude. Most Americans do. We have an affinity towards Israel. What's that based on? And is that? And what do you have? What's the spiritual Christian view of this? Go ahead.
Well, Tim, that's a great question, and I think it's
That's why I'm
something
here.
people need to know. For one thing, America has been Israel's longest ally. Just hours after they were reconstituted as a nation in May 14, 1948, then President Harry Truman said the United States recognizes the sovereign nation of Israel. So, as far as I'm aware, we were the first nation to be on record as aligning ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say, why do we have an affinity for Israel? Because of historical precedent, and also because of they're the only stable democracy in the Middle East. They're our longest ally in the Middle East. They're our greatest colleague in terms of modern warfare and security, not only for the Middle East. I think we have a vested interest in a strong Israel. We share their same philosophical foundation in terms of the Judeo-Christian worldview. And then I'm just going to say, because America was a Christian nation, still is a Christian nation, we know that Genesis 12:1 and 2, God will bless us if we bless Abraham and his seed. That's why I've
Is
said
that the modern day country of Israel? Is that what we're talking about?
the modern day nation of Israel is the seed of Abraham. They are the nation of Israel. I believe unequivocally that the modern state of Israel is the fulfillment of the Bible prophecy that in the last days God would regather the Jews from the four winds, bring them back to Israel. And I would say this, Tim, the greatest favor any president could do the American people is to be a friend to the nation of Israel.
Amen. All right. Thank you, Alex.
Well, thank you, guys.
Thanks for stopping by.
It's an honor.
We're going to you in studio today
Yes, sir.
for Exploring the Word this afternoon, right?
Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you, Alex. Alex McFarland joining us. Ray will be back. I'll be back. Wesley and Chris, we got more news to discuss. Stay with us.
It's my turn.
Here is your host for My Turn, Don Wildman.
Out of the papers came the story of Salty. Salty is a 21-month-old mongrel. Not an average dog, mind you, but a determined dog nevertheless. Salty belonged to Mrs. Margie LaBeouf of Detroit and was her pet. She kept Salty for some time and then gave her to some friends in the suburbs because she said, "My place is so small, I thought it wasn't fair to keep her here." Well, the new owners kept Salty until she gave birth to a litter of puppies, and then they gave Salty to a family in Sheboygan, 272 miles northwest of Detroit. Mrs. LaBeouf gave Salty away in August, and Salty stayed with the second set of new owners until around the middle of December. Then Salty suddenly disappeared. For the next 2 weeks, Salty traveled over 272 miles of woods, fields, streams, roads, and towns, from a place where she'd never been before. And although Salty perhaps didn't know where she started from, she did know where she wanted to go, home, back to Detroit and to Mrs. Margie LaBeouf. On New Year's Day, Mrs. LaBeouf went downstairs to take out the trash, and there stood Salty. "She knocked me down and started licking my face and kissing me," says Miss LaBeouf. "She was wet and tired and so dirty that it was difficult to tell what color she was. Her paws were bleeding and she was starving. But with tail wagging, Salty was home. Home at last. The journey was over." Salty set out for something she wanted more than anything in the world, and she got it. It's a story about a dog, but if you'll raise the level just slightly, you'll find the same truth about humans. For we humans, like Salty the dog, usually get to the place in life where we want to go. The reason many of us never get any farther than we do is very simple. We never really want to get any farther. I can recall the story of one man who set out to accomplish something in life, something he wanted more than anything else. And the road that led to his dreams wasn't an easy one either, but he wanted to go, and he paid the price. Through towns where he wasn't wanted, over roads where he was spat upon, through valleys that echoed the hatred that the good people had for him, he traveled. When he finally arrived at the place, accomplished that which he wanted to accomplish, he was bloody and bruised and weak from a merciless beating, but he was not beaten. In his hands were huge holes caused by the metal spikes with which he was suspended on a cross. And as if this was not enough, someone slashed a hole in his side to see more blood flow. While Salty came home dirty, tired, bloody, and shaggy, she got what she wanted, to see her master again. And the Galilean accomplished his goal, too, to make it possible for us to see our master. And because of his journey, for many of us, the journey is over.
This has been My Turn with Don Wildman, a production of the American Family Association.
Have no fear of them, nor be troubled, but in your hearts honor Christ the Lord as holy, always being prepared to make a defense to anyone who asks you for a reason for the hope that is in you. Yet do it with gentleness and respect, having a good conscience, so that when you are slandered, those who revile your good behavior in Christ may be put to shame. 1 Peter 3:14 through 16.
American Family Radio. This is today's issues. Email your comments to comments@afr.net. Past broadcasts of today's issues are available for listening and viewing in the archive at afr.net. Now, back to more of today's issues.
Hey, welcome back, everybody, to today's issues on the American Family Radio Network. Tim, Wesley, Chris, and Ray, and Alex McFarland was with us a few minutes ago. Ray, you want to comment on your take on America's relationship to Israel?
You know, you raised a great question, Tim, because does America have interest in what happens in Indonesia, Philippines? Absolutely. Do we have a national interest in maintaining sea lanes in the South China Sea? Yes, we do. But Israel is different. And I thought Alex gave a very complete answer to that question, that historically America has been Israel's best friend in the entire world since 1948. But you could flip that around, Tim, and say equally true, especially in the Middle East, where we don't historically have a great many friends. Israel has been a consistent friend and supporter of the United States of America. It's the only true democracy in the Middle East. And now, look, as you pointed out, Israel and Jordan generally get along okay, and the U.S. and Jordan have a good relationship. Egypt is up and down depending on who's in power, but I would say from 1948 until now, America and Israel have had a huge overlap of coinciding national interests.
Yes.
So I'm glad that we are standing with the Israeli people. And then at the end of his answer, Alex quoted Genesis 12. We understand if you're not a Christian, you don't believe the Bible, that's not going to make any sense to you. But we as American Christians, we have an additional reason. We believe God has preserved the Jewish people and the nation of Israel for his own divine purposes, and it's part of the fulfillment of Bible prophecy that, Tim, day by day is coming true before our very eyes.
Dad's looking at me. I have nothing to add.
Okay. You have nothing to add?
But other than to say I agree with Alex and I agree with Pastor Ray here, I'm really frustrated right now. We're at a coffee out there, and during the coffee break.
That can affect your attitude.
Listen, that was for us.
I understand.
For us,
I got the last of it.
Yeah.
But I didn't know you.
I knew it.
So I didn't see you anywhere. So I didn't know you were coming behind me.
I know that.
But I probably wouldn't have mattered.
You weren't even looking for him either.
For the listening audience, you get the news break. For us, it was a coffee break.
Coffee break. You had
there was no coffee
machine.
I have a question for Ray.
Caffeine.
I have a question for Ray that relates to what we're talking about here with Israel.
Coffee or Israel? Coffee or Israel?
Israel.
Okay.
Israel.
All right. Okay. So as we've already discussed, Scripture, God does tell us that we should bless Israel, and he lays out reasons as to why. In my experience in broadcasting, which goes back to 2002, when things like this happen in the world, oftentimes our brothers and sisters, even in Christ, will say things like, well, blessed are the peacemakers, which is from Matthew 5:9. Our same God, our same Bible also tells us things like there is a time for war, which is in Ecclesiastes. So is Matthew 5:9, blessed are the peacemakers, kind of a personal thing, or like how do you sort out those kinds of verses?
Well, let's understand that blessed are the peacemakers is not a command given to nations. It's given to individuals. It's given to you. It's given to me, to fathers and mothers and moms and dads and grandparents, and inside the local church. God has given to us as his people to say, as you go out into the world, seek peace in this world. Seek the shalom of the world, the peace and prosperity and blessing of those around you. So I would say, number one, we ought to be for peace. We ought to be people of peace. And somebody, I don't know who, somebody quoted, pray for the peace of Jerusalem, right, from Psalm 122. We are commanded to pray that there might be peace. But understand that in the Bible, our God himself is called the God of war. The old term was the Lord of hosts. Literally, it's the Lord of heaven's armies. Heaven's armies. He is a God who will go to war to defend that which is right. Sometimes to establish peace in the world, there must first be war. And I think obviously what happened 80 years ago, World War II, we tried negotiating, but you don't negotiate with cold-blooded killers like Hitler. You just don't. They must.
I can add an amen to that.
England tried, and it didn't work.
It didn't work, right? It did not work. War is a regrettable, awful last necessity. Sometimes it's the only way to become a peacemaker in the world.
Yeah, on a selfish note, Israel is. I say selfish note. It's not really selfish, but I mean, having traveled to Israel over, probably 24 times or more. I've forgotten. I had to count it up. But since I started going with my dad in the mid 90s, something like that. Anyway, listen, Israel is the home to all the holy sites of Christianity and Judaism and Islam, some. But for Christians around the world, Israel's the Holy Land.
That's right.
And, you start. I don't want. That makes sense. I don't want to see it
It's
attacked
important to us.
because I want these holy sites preserved.
Sure.
Is that? I know I do care about people's lives, but I also care about that.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, if you go back 1,000 years to the time of the Crusades, that's one of the noble impulses of the Crusades, which have gotten, that's another whole topic, they've gotten a lot of bad press. But one part of the Crusader impulse was to go and take back the Holy Land of God away from, quote, the pagans who were holding it in that day. And I think that's a noble thing to do. This is where our Lord was born, where he lived, where he walked, where he died, where he was crucified and rose from the dead. That is worth preserving.
Amen. All right, well, we'll talk to Tony Perkins more about this at the top of the hour. Next story, Chris.
Well, Donald Trump is back in a New York City court today to continue jury selection. This is for the so-called hush money trial that goes back several years to the 2016 campaign. I do have some audio here from the former president. He was in a hallway with a lot of reporters and many
when was
security
this,
personnel.
yesterday or today?
This is this morning, just before the show started, in fact. And Trump spoke to reporters this morning in New York City. Clip 5.
I should be right now in Pennsylvania, in Florida, in many other states, North Carolina, Georgia, campaigning. This is all coming from the Biden White House because the guy can't put two sentences together. He can't campaign. They're using this in order to try and win an election, and it's not working that way. It's working the opposite way. So check that out. Legal expense. It's called legal expense. That's what you're supposed to call it. Mr. Trump, you get indicted on that. Nobody's ever seen it. Nobody has ever seen anything like it. So thank you very much for coming. I'm now going to sit down for many hours. I am now going to sit down. The voters understand it. All you have to do is look at the polls.
You know, that was definitely in the hall.
It was definitely in the hallway. I was trying to make you aware.
Marble walls
Yeah.
or something. But they could have done that at a different place, but I understood what he was saying, everything he was saying there. So this trial that's going on, I'm about to sneeze, so but do that. I'm gonna hit
You're
the
not
button.
crying that Donald Trump is going.
I'm not sneezing because one way or another on that one. Okay, so this is the trial where he allegedly paid hush money,
correct,
to women to be quiet about affairs before he ran for president, before the election in 2016.
Correct.
Right. So then Trump says I didn't have any affairs. Is that right?
He has said that before, yes.
With these women. Okay. I'm going to just tell you my analysis here, my opinion, Ray, and then we can. Two things can be true at one time. Okay. One is, this Manhattan District Attorney is bent on going after Trump because he hates him politically. If this were anybody else, this would never even come up. Because rich people pay off women every day to keep their mouths shut about affairs.
Right.
Okay? That doesn't make it right. It's immoral. It's wrong in terms of cheating on your wife, but it happens all the time. And nobody goes to court to try to make a big deal of it. And that's what this DA is doing. Listen, you got all kind of crime in New York. You got your hands full. Violent crime's out of control, and this guy's going after Trump for paying off a woman to keep her mouth shut?
But I'm confused though. Is he saying that it's illegal to pay off a woman?
What they're saying
the process was illegal.
It's kind of technical, but what they're saying is that that Trump's attorney, Michael Cohen, paid off this Stormy Daniels and this other woman two women that Trump were having. He says he wasn't. They say, but okay, if you believe that,
Right.
I got a bridge in.
Sure.
Yaknapatawpha County.
Okay, so, but anyway, Trump says he wasn't. He didn't, and so he's on trial. But what happened was these women. Okay, the lawyer paid the woman $130,000.
Right.
And on the accounting sheet it says, this was a business transaction. Well, I think he paid her. I think allegedly Cohen paid her out of the campaign or something like that.
I'm tracking with you.
So, if that's what they're trying to prove, that it was an illegal.
Did she sign an NDA or anything
expenditure? Yeah, she did, and she talked anyway. So it's just a mess. So I'll say all that. Is this a political vendetta against Trump? Yes, it is. That's number one. But Trump's past is coming back to haunt him, because he lived the life of a New York playboy, and now I don't agree with it. Don't get me wrong. I think it's politically motivated, but now, quote, his sins have found him out, so to speak, and he's having to deal with this. It's embarrassing to him and his family, but of course he's going to say he didn't do anything wrong, and so we'll see what happens here. My guess in the end, they're having to find a jury now, right?
And I don't know that we talked about this yesterday with Ed. I don't know anywhere on planet Earth you can find an impartial group of 12 people that don't have an opinion.
I know.
About
Half
Trump.
of them got dismissed yesterday because they said they couldn't. I agree with you. How are you going to find 12 people in America that don't have an opinion one way or another?
I've always been shocked that you can find that one. If Fox finds that one guy every 2 months before the presidential election that's still not decided. Like, I can believe that far more than I don't have an opinion one way or the other of Donald Trump. Like, everybody, you love him or you hate him, you have an opinion of him.
Anyway, Ray,
that's a good summary. Look, Donald Trump is not on trial for being a playboy, right? He's not on trial for sleeping with Stormy Daniels, if he did or didn't. I mean, you've pointed out, Tim, correctly, and for many years, let's just go way back before his political stuff. I mean, he was a rich New York playboy, and that's kind of how
everybody knew it. He traded in wives every 20 years. I mean,
well, and he didn't, he almost bragged about that kind of thing. But Trump is not on trial for whether he did or didn't sleep with Stormy Daniels, because if he did, that would be adultery. But that's not crime. That's not a crime, right? Not punishable that way. It's exactly what you said, and it's hard to explain. The whole thing is a joke. There's that term, lawfare. You've heard that term.
If this wasn't Trump, you wouldn't have. If this was something, you would never even hear anything about it.
His attorney, Alina Habba, said as much. I'm not going to play the clip, but she did say that today on Fox and Friends. She said Alvin Bragg, the DA there in Manhattan, is doing this because Donald Trump is running for president.
Yeah,
I'm Chris Woodward.
All right, next story.
All right.
Move on from that.
This very well could be the lead story had we not had the issue involving Israel and Iran and the Trump story I just brought up. The House is sending the articles of impeachment of one DHS Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas to the Senate today to begin the trial, which Ted Cruz and others in the Senate would tell you is never going to happen because Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, a Democrat, is not going to allow there to be a trial of Alejandro Mayorkas. Now, let's go back several months because it's been that long.
You just like saying his name, don't you?
I do. Alejandro Mayorkas. It flows off the tongue better than Chris Woodward.
Yeah,
anyway.
After you tried 100 times in your office, there's no way you got that the first time.
I do it in the car,
Alexandria
too.
What's
Alejandro Mayorkas.
Okay.
Anyway, so
he's the fall man for President Biden.
Right. Earlier this year, the Republican-led House, after a couple of attempts, did vote to impeach Mayorkas for dereliction of duty over issues involving the broken southern border. And so now it goes to the Senate. They're going to supposedly have the trial on whether to convict him. They're probably not going to. Meanwhile, the court of public opinion is still out there saying Mayorkas needs to be removed from office because somebody's got to be held accountable for the broken border. I've got audio here from a mother. Her name is Josephine Dunn. She lost her daughter to a fentanyl poisoning several months or years ago, and she joined Fox and Friends first this morning, and she blames Mayorkas for her daughter's fentanyl death. Clip 8.
My child was poisoned by 1/2 of one Percocet tablet that was counterfeit. It was made in Mexico with products from China that poisoned my daughter. She did not overdose. Let me correct you. She was poisoned. She was murdered by products made in Mexico, brought into this country, that were welcomed in by Mayorkas and this administration.
I would be shocked if that is not on some sort of campaign ad in favor of Trump in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, Ray, any thoughts on this?
Well, look, the real problem, and this goes to the bigger question that we've been talking about. Mr. Trump is embroiled. Yes, Chris, this ought to be on a campaign ad. But the problem is Mr. Trump is so embroiled with all of these. It's one trial after another after another. Tim, what they are doing with the lawfare is to try to keep him so entangled that he can't present issues like this to the American people. Because you know what? If it weren't for all these lawsuits and it was just Trump v. Biden straight up, I think Trump would walk into the White House.
Mm-hmm.
I think it would not just be a victory. I think he would win going away.
Yeah, I've been just back to this. Yes, and just back to this. You have any thoughts on what this mom shared about her daughter dying of fentanyl, right, Wesley?
Well, I don't have any comments on that specifically, but on Mayorkas,
He was impeached by the House of Representatives.
Yes.
Okay, that's barely, but he was impeached. This was a serious issue.
Sure.
He's a Department of Homeland Security guy, top guy, cabinet level guy. He was impeached by the House Republicans, and I don't know if any Democrats crossed
For what's
over.
taking place at the border.
Yeah, yes, for dereliction of duty.
Right.
I mean, this guy is horrible. He and his boss is horrible. Biden, we all know this, been well documented as securing our border. What this mom is saying is he's partly responsible for the death of her daughter because her daughter died of fentanyl overdose. And where's fentanyl coming from? Fentanyl's coming from, well, it's coming from China a lot, but it makes its way to Mexico, and the drug cartels are having a heyday because Biden didn't do squat to stop them from coming over the border, and thousands of Americans are dying on a weekly basis by fentanyl overdose because we've not been able to control our border. Now, I will say this. Have drugs come here illegally forever? Yes, they have. That is true. We had cocaine. We had, all kind of drugs have come into America over the years, but we've always fought against it. And now what this mama's saying is we're not even doing it. We, the U.S. federal government's not even doing much to stop it, the flow of it.
Well, and that's just one area that the open border has caused issues. But were you talking about the illegal aliens also committing crime within the United States?
Yes.
We've covered this before.
Yes.
Just in the last couple months, just that's made the news alone, there's been at least 3 killings of people that were killed by illegal aliens.
Right. That's going to happen more, sadly.
It does happen more. It just doesn't make them. It doesn't make CNN.
Right.
Unless it's a college student that's 18.
Right.
But it happens a good bit, and that's the crime by the individuals. This right here is obviously what happens when they bring over the drugs as well.
Right. Next story, Chris.
Yesterday,
Chris?
At the White House press briefing, Karine Jean-Pierre, the spokesperson for President Joe Biden.
Do I have to hear this?
Yes, because I'm going to set up the clip, and then I'm going to tag it with the information that you need as part of the story. It's not a long clip.
KJP.
I did it for you.
KJP, come on.
KJP yesterday, when asked about high gas prices, she said that gas is cheaper today than it was a year ago. Clip 7.
The average gas price right now is cheaper than this time last year, and that's because of what this president has been doing over the last 3 years.
Now, she is technically correct, but I looked it up, and according to AAA's fuel prices information, gas prices yesterday were a whopping 3 cents cheaper than they were the year before.
If I can use American slang here, that ain't going to last. Because
no.
All right, in Kansas, in Tupelo and in northeast Mississippi, where I was this weekend, gas is up to a
little over $3.
It's over $3 a gallon, right? Where is it? What is it in Kansas
City?
It's
above that here in Kansas City.
Unleaded?
I can tell you what your state average is.
Okay, what is it?
Your state average, according to AAA, is
in
$3.27.
It's 3 what?
$3.27 a gallon.
Whoa. Yeah.
In
and
Mississippi.
it's going to go up.
Oh,
It
yeah.
is
And we're
going
not
to
even
go
in the
up.
busy travel season yet.
All right,
That's the problem.
Here's what I got to say. I want you to watch this. Watch. Karine Jean-Pierre is the White House spokesperson. We all know and love. We have a great affection for her. And her skill set is wow. Huh?
It's impressive.
It's impressive. And her wardrobe, knock it out of the
She'll
park.
keep your attention. You're
Yes.
just
Okay. KJP. All right. That's she's a legend for many KJP the legend for many reasons. All right, listen. Here's what I want to note right here. Let's just play her clip, and then I want you to listen to what she says.
The average gas price right now is cheaper than this time last year, and that's because of what this president has been doing over the last 3 years.
Okay. If Biden gets credit for gas prices being cheaper than they were a year ago, does Biden also get blame when they go up in the this summer by 30, 40 cents a gallon than they are right now? You think she's going to come back and say in July and say, you know what? We took credit when it went down. Now we're going to take the blame when it goes up.
if you drill, we can not just drop 3%. We can get down to $1.70, $1.50 if we drill. So the whole idea here that she thinks she's gonna trick us to think that there's some significant change in the gas prices that's gonna make us happy as American citizens.
Yeah,
that's
I don't normally. I've talked about this before. Me personally, and you guys may disagree with me, and that's fine. I don't blame or credit a president for gas prices for the most part. Okay, because the oil market goes up, goes down. I don't blame now she's taking credit because it's down, but she ain't gonna take the blame when it goes up. It only works one way. But let me just finish this.
Sure.
However, I do blame a president for the rise in gas prices if he's against drilling, as you say, and against oil production and against fossil fuel. So Biden is at war against the quote, fossil fuel industry, the oil and gas industry. I mean, we all know this in the name of saving the planet from burning up, the green movement. Biden's all sold out to them. So when you go that way, it does, and you make it punitive for companies to produce oil and gasoline, then you need to take the blame when the prices go up for oil and gasoline, and that's where I blame Biden. Ray, does that make sense?
Well, it certainly does. And in this segment, we've just identified two of Joe Biden's, I guess, weakest points. Number one is the southern border, which we talked about earlier, and now the whole question of the economy and gas prices. And Donald Trump ought to be hitting Joe Biden on the border crisis and on gas prices nonstop from now until.
So you're at $3.27 a gallon in Kansas City,
and up. Maybe closer to
I'll
$3.
give you
I
an
guess
idea.
we got life good right here.
Oh,
What
we
is
do,
it,
yeah.
304.
If you look at AAA's daily
no
fuel gauge
KJP.
report,
Life is not good right here.
So,
That's what she wants you to
I'm
think.
showing you here, the dark blue, navy blue portion of the United States, the continental United States, is the cheaper. Now, that's not saying that our gas prices are a bargain, because they're ridiculous as well. California's paying the most. Alaska's really bad. Hawaii, God bless you. Diesel, meanwhile, is averaging $4.04. It's going to go up. So,
Well, two things about Hawaii. It takes a lot of money to bring the gas. Probably very expensive to bring the gasoline to the islands. But then number two, you don't have to use a car. You don't want to. Just use your bike or walk.
The average in Hawaii today is $4.76.
It was as low as $1.84 when President Trump was in office.
But gasoline was what?
It got as low as $1.84.
Yeah. Yeah, President Trump was very friendly to the oil and gas industry. He didn't go with the green movement like Biden's going 100% with. We'll be back momentarily. Stay with us.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast may not necessarily reflect those of the American Family Association or American Family Radio.
Faith, family, freedom. American Family Radio.
The Bible is God's infallible word, the foundation for our lives, establishing what we believe and who we are. But to more and more people, that's just not the case. They try to pick it apart and change it instead of letting it shape them. The documentary, The God Who Speaks, establishes the Bible's infallibility and is a great tool to solidify our faith. Watch it anytime at streaming.afa.net.
This is American Family Radio, a listener-supported ministry of the American Family Association.
American Family News, I'm Rusty Pugh. The Senate is preparing to receive articles of impeachment from the House of Representatives for Department of Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas. The looming question remains over what Democrats, who are in the majority in the upper chamber, will look to do after being sworn in as jurors on Wednesday. Mayorkas began the day testifying before the same committee that led to his House impeachment, and he faced stark criticism right out of the gate. This is Tennessee Congressman Mark Green.
You've refused to comply with the laws passed by Congress, and you've breached the public trust. You've facilitated and encouraged record levels of illegal immigration since your first day in office. And we've all witnessed the devastating results of your open borders agenda.
President Biden and the Democrats appeared to show strong support for Israel immediately following the unprovoked October 7th attacks by Hamas that killed innocent Israeli men, women, and children. But that support has been eroding, and many believe Joe Biden will aim to appease the anti-Israel protesters. Dan Senor is the former policy advisor for President George W. Bush.
The problem with the direction they're heading in is no matter how far they go, rhetorically, in the direction of where the protesters want them to go, they will never go far enough. They will never be able to mollify these protesters. And in the process of pandering to this part of the Democrats' coalition, they're going to turn off a whole other segment of the electorate and do real damage to the United States. So I think it's a loser's game that they're playing. They will never be able to win these people over. The people that are protesting are so irrational, so ill-informed, and so knowingly destructive that the idea that you can win points with them to the point that you will calm them down by kind of signaling to them that you sort of agree with them is just completely foolish.
Pro-terrorist, anti-Israel, and anti-American activists blocked the Brooklyn Bridge, the Golden Gate Bridge, and roads to Chicago's O'Hare Airport in a coordinated effort on Monday. Fox News contributor Tommy Lahren says the fact that people can block bridges while screaming death to America is just more proof of how far the Democrats have fallen.
The fact that this administration is courting the votes of people like this and is afraid to stand by Israel and condemn what's going on our streets as far as this death to America nonsense, that just goes to show you how far the Democrat Party has fallen.
One nation is fighting back as the U.S. makes demands to support abortion. Charlie Butts has more.
In 2022, about 36 countries, including the United States, signed the Geneva Consensus Declaration on promoting women's health and strengthening the family. It declares there is no international right to abortion. Within days after Biden took office, the U.S. withdrew. Valerie Huber of the Institute for Women's Health.
This coalition is more important than ever because countries are under such tremendous pressure to abandon their traditional values and exchange it for ideological priorities, which is just plain wrong.
Most recently, the Biden administration has been pressuring Guatemala to legalize abortion.
I had no idea how the influence of our country, how our taxpayer dollars were being used for purely ideological purposes that run counter to my values. And not only that, taxpayer dollars shouldn't be used to pressure these countries.
The U.S. wants Guatemala to withdraw from the Geneva Consensus Declaration as it has pressured other countries who signed off on it, one which declares that any human being has the right to life. U.S. Senators Steve Daines, James Lankford, and Lindsey Graham have signed a letter encouraging Guatemala to remain a signatory. I'm Charlie Butts.
A federal appeals court has overturned a West Virginia ban on males competing on girls' sports teams, finding, ironically, that the law violates Title IX, the federal civil rights law that prohibits sex-based discrimination in schools. The ruling today from the 4th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals blocks a West Virginia law banning biological boys from playing on girls' sports teams. For American Family News, I'm Rusty Pugh.
The Hilton hotel chain is promoting the LGBTQ agenda with its latest commercial depicting individuals, couples, and families, at best in androgynous roles in pink clothing and accessories. The ad features portrayals of characters blatantly putting the LGBTQ lifestyle in the viewers' faces, disguised as celebrity treatment. If you agree this ad is inappropriate, visit 1millionmoms.com today to sign our petition urging Hilton to pull this ad. 1millionmoms.com.
Today's Issues continues on AFR with your host, Tim Wildman, president of the American Family Association.
Hey, welcome back to Today's Issues on the American Family Radio Network. Thanks for listening to this program and to AFR. If you want to send us an email, you need to stop and ask yourself, is it positive and encouraging? And here's the email address, if so, comments@afr.net, comments@afr.net. If it's not positive and encouraging, you need to just ditch it, okay? Because I don't want to read it. And Steve don't want to read it. Wesley, you want to read it, Wesley?
No, I
don't. You want to read negative
I don't.
stuff?
Now, where do we fall on constructive criticism?
I don't.
We don't fall on.
No.
Okay, that's all I need to know.
That's right. I fall. I fall away from it. Huh? All right. Ray Pritchard, raised in Kansas City, and anyway, we thank you. If you want to send us an email, comments@afr.net, comments@afr.net is the email address. Okay, so Tony Perkins joins us now. Tony's president of the Family Research Council, and he is really paying close attention to what's happening in Washington, D.C. relative to our relationship to Israel. And get Tony's emails. Tony, good morning to you.
Good morning, Tim. And I guess people can just go ahead and send those negative emails to me. I'll take them.
Go for it.
frc.org. Go ahead and send them in.
So if you got anything negative and discouraging to say, folks, and you want to address that to Tim, my assistant, Tony Perkins, would be glad to receive those and read them each line by line.
Tony, does that mean that you're preparing for what you're about to talk about?
I'm prepared to talk with Tim. That's what I'm prepared for.
So, Tony, are you in Baton Rouge or D.C. today?
I'm in D.C.
Okay.
Right here in Washington, D.C., the belly of the beast.
I got you. All right. Well, Tony, what's going on with Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House, and Mike's under a lot of pressure right now, obviously. Well, every Speaker of the House is always under a lot of pressure. But, I mean, what kind of support are we going to give, the United States Congress, going to give Israel?
Well, I actually spoke with Mike several times over the weekend regarding this issue, and so they worked last night in developing a package moving forward. The Senate, first off, one of the first acts he did as Speaker back in October was to send over a funding bill for Israel to the Senate, which Chuck Schumer has sat on for over 4 months. They sent a second bill over. That's still being set on. That Schumer will not schedule a vote. So the Senate sent over this, the supplemental that includes Ukraine, Taiwan, and Israel.
Sure it does.
There's concern regarding the Ukraine funding, although it does have merit from a standpoint of looking where Putin is going and what he's doing and how that could draw the United States into a war in Europe if he rolls beyond Ukraine and into a NATO country. But that aside, so the Speaker has put forward funding bills separating those. Those are going to come up this week. So he's trying to get funding to Israel, especially in light of the vacillation, and I'm using that trying to be as charitable as I can to the Biden administration toward Israel. We want to send a very strong message that we stand with and support Israel.
Hey, Tony, Steve Jordahl here. When Donald Trump was in office, we keep hearing this juxtaposition, if you're listening to Donald Trump, this wouldn't have happened on my watch, and now the Biden administration is weak. We've seen the weakness of the Biden administration's foreign policy. But is it a risk if you had someone like Donald Trump in there? Would that have – I mean, it's kind of you're on a razor's edge because, yes, they might not have launched it, but if they had launched it with someone like Donald Trump in office, maybe it would have escalated
Launched
quicker.
what?
The missile launch from Iran towards Israel. I'm talking about that.
Right.
The administration's response to that.
So peace through strength was the motto of Ronald Reagan, and that's actually kind of a biblical approach. Peace if you have strength, and of course we understand that strength comes from an underlying foundation of moral strength, and from that you can build your military strength. And there's this sense of I don't want to mess with you in the international community. There had been a revival of that, to speak of, not to use that in a spiritual term, but to use that vernacular, that there had been a regaining of that in the international community when Trump was president. That was completely lost systematically by the Biden administration. Here, I'll tell you what I believe has prompted, and I think this is backed up by the facts, what prompted Iran to take these steps against Israel in this unprecedented attack of 331 drones, missiles, surface-to-surface missiles, was the United States, in many ways, hindering the Israeli government from responding in a definitive way in Gaza and eliminating Hamas, even as it pertained primarily to Rafah here in the last several weeks. And I know that I was there in Israel, met with the Prime Minister. This was discussed. And I was listening Sunday to a BBC interview with a professor out of Tehran who basically was mocking Israel, saying, well, they can't even take care of that small Gaza Strip. They're nothing. And so that was a perception of weakness. It opened the door for this attack that could end up in a global conflict. It's going to be very interesting to see how Israel responds. They will respond. To the degree that they respond is yet to be seen.
Wow.
Talking to Tony Perkins, by the way, Steve Paisley Jordahl with us. I failed to introduce you.
That's
Steve,
okay.
Wesley Wildman, Tim, and Ray. That's one of the reasons I wanted to have you on, Tony, because you talk to the leaders in Israel. You know them personally, and so let me ask you this question: Do they understand the affinity? I'm sure they do, that American, especially evangelical Christians, have for the nation of Israel and how we're standing with them?
Yes, they do, but they want to see it. I was just in my office just a few minutes ago was a member of the Knesset, Ohad Tal, who is from the Zionist Party, and he's here. He represents the area of Samaria and Judea, which is the part of the Bible land. I mean, 80% of what we read about in the Bible took place there. That's what they want to give away with this two-state solution, giving that to the Palestinians. So the Prime Minister, when I met with him, he said, we really need Christians to be more visible in their support for Israel because they're not seeing it the way they know that it's there. But I'm telling you right now, they're looking for it more than ever. And this is an opportunity for Bible-believing Christians to stand on the Word of God. And that's what I told him. I said, Mr. Prime Minister, we may not agree with everything that you do, but we're not going anywhere because we're people of the book. And we know what Genesis 12 says, those who bless you will be blessed. And we believe that this modern day of this Jewish state is a revival, a reconstitution of the Jewish nation. And so what we're actually doing, Tim, is on May the 19th, and you've signed on to this, you're a part of this. We're going to be releasing this to pastors even today, I think. May 19th, Sunday, May 19th, is going to be Pray For and Stand With Israel Sunday. And so we want to see as many churches as possible across the country taking at least a few minutes. They could do more if they want, but just a few minutes of praying for Israel, and I'm doing this as a result of the request of the Prime Minister, that he wants to see the churches standing with him. They are asking for our prayers and for our help. So if people would like to find out more about that, just simply text Israel to 67742. It's Israel to 67742, and you can be a part of that effort and appreciate AFR and AFA being a part of that, Tim.
Yeah, how do you give that information one more time?
Text Israel to 67742. That'll take you to a link to the website where you can sign a pledge to pray for Israel and find out more about how your church can be a part of it.
All right. Thanks, Tony. Take care. Appreciate it.
All right, guys. Keep Mississippi in check for me, will you?
All right, we will.
We're on it.
All right.
Hey, Mississippi goes blue, we're all going down.
Oh,
Okay.
Don't even want to think about
Or
it.
Louisiana, your home state. All right, thank you.
That's right.
Tony Perkins joining us there. Steve's with us, and Ray, let me ask you this question. We talked a lot about Israel today because the relationship that you mentioned, the historical relationship that the United States has had with Israel, and I want to say this too. I think the more Christians are standing with Israel than Jews.
Oh, I think that's true. But
In the U.S.
Yeah. Well, the Jewish community is quite liberal. We've known this way over to the left, deep blue, right? I think the thing that is concerning, is that the right word? Revealing, maybe that's the word, that that Tony just said, that we need evangelical Christians to speak out now more than ever before. And look, there's been a rise in anti-Semitism in America and around the world. I don't think the October 7th attack caused it. I think it revealed what was already there. Maybe some Christians, we look at what's happened in Gaza, which is awful. The destruction is awful. Okay, we don't have to. We can.
War is hell.
War is hell. That's right. It is. It's awful. There's nothing good about that, and yet we still have to say Israel has the right not only to defend itself but to respond when attacked. And I just wish more Christians, and may I say, Tim, more pastors would speak out, not just in favor of peace in a general sense, but I wish we had more Christians and more pastors who would say we stand unequivocally on the side of the Jewish people and on the side of the nation of Israel. In this time of crisis, Israel needs to know who its friends are. And I think really the Israelis have no better friends than the evangelical Christian community in America. And so, folks, we need to step up and speak out.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask Tony, but I didn't get a chance.
I let him go.
You did.
He needs to start answering those negative emails.
Well, I'll ask us here. What do we think? What is Biden? There's been times where Biden said, of course, he said on October. I don't know if it was literally the October 8th, but as soon as October 7th happened, immediately came out and said in support of Israel.
Right.
But then his actions had said difference, and then he said he did. What do we think he could do to solidify or prove? I don't think he would. What can he do?
Biden's created a mess for himself, and the Democrat Party have created a mess for themselves by trying to play both sides of the fence. Okay. Now, part of being the Secretary of State, Anthony Blinken, and the U.S. has always, in a sense, tried to at least verbalize a understanding of the feelings of Arabs or Muslims in Israel who feel like the Israelis are not treating them fairly. Okay, let's put it that way. Now, so the Arabs. But, an interesting poll was taken 2 or 3 years ago, Ray, and Steve and Wesley, and listeners, and I don't have it here in front of me, but a poll was taken of Arabs who live, and the Arabs are mostly Muslims, probably 80, 90%. You have about 10 to 20% of the Arabs in Israel are Christians, but most of them are Muslims. But a survey was taken, do you want to live in Israel, in a Jewish state, or do you want to live in a Muslim country? and the Muslim Arabs voted that they wanted to live in Israel because the quality of life was better.
Right.
Quality
Which
of life.
do you want, poverty or prosperity? Which
Do you want to live
peace or chaos?
You want to live under Israeli law? You want to live under Sharia law?
Right.
Now, Israeli law, yes, they are not, no, they're not as necessarily free as U.S. citizens are under our Constitution.
Right.
But that's true of any country in the world. We have
Right.
more freedoms and liberties than any place in the world. Individual rights.
Hence American exceptionalism.
Exactly. But still, nonetheless, the Arabs when in Israel would rather live in Israel, despite the fact that they have issues sometimes with the Israeli government. Now, Israel's a Jewish state. It's a official Jewish state. I mean, so they have to protect their identity, and they do that. But the primary thing is that Israel has been under attack because the Iranians, who are Sunni Shia Muslims, religiously have adopted a hate Israel, hate the Jews mantra, much like Adolf Hitler did.
Sure.
I would say it's a different necessary. Adolf Hitler, he hated the Jews because he felt like they had manipulated the banks to the detriment of the average German citizen. At least that's what he said.
That was the excuse.
That's what he said. But there's all kind of reasons for hating Jews, anti-Semitism. But the Iranians just hate them for religious reasons. And so, anyway, but we need to stand with Israel. Doesn't mean Israel right or wrong. As Tony said, sometimes we have disagreements. Maybe they don't do this or that right. But in a general sense, they're under siege from enemies around the world. It's a spiritual matter to a large extent, and we, the American Christian community, needs to stand with Israel.
It was the poll you're referring to was 93% polled that Arabs, residents of Jerusalem, preferred Israeli rule over the Palestinian Authority.
Palestinian Authority.
Palestinian, yep.
Okay. When was that survey from?
2021. But to your point, though, 93%.
Yeah.
So they rather live in Israel.
They prefer living under Israeli rule. These are Palestinians.
Yes.
In the West Bank, polled Arab of Jerusalem, in East Jerusalem, Palestinian Authority.
I know it's a small amount, but 21% of them also said they would be willing to give up their identity, their identity card or their nationality. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. All right, Julie. Anyway, Ray, anything to say on that before we move on to the next topic here?
I'm not surprised, and I just want to say, Tim, it's going to be we've been talking about praying for the peace of Jerusalem. Israel has a tough decision to make here, a tough decision. Do you not respond at all? I think everybody agrees there's going to be some kind of response. And I saw one article, Tim, that said they're going to hit the nuclear reactors in Iran. Oh boy. That the problem with that kind of response, it ratchets things up so high. You risk. How do you respond forcefully without plunging the whole region into all-out war? It's a good question. I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah. We'll just have to wait and see what happens, because sometimes you want to respond, but the best thing to do is to show restraint to lessen the risk of an all-out world war, for example. So we will see what Israel does or doesn't do in the coming days in response, or weeks. Hey, I wanted to mention before we move on to the next story, we've got about 15 seats left on our Spiritual Heritage Tour in June of Washington, D.C. and Mount Vernon. We're going to see all the sites of our nation's capital. We're going to explore them from a historical and a Christian heritage perspective with Stephen McDowell, of the Providence Foundation. And we're going to have a lot of fun and eat well and a lot of fellowship too. So we're going to do that in June. We're going to go to a separate trip to Colonial Williamsburg, Jamestown, and Yorktown as well. So a lot of American history to be explored this June and September on these tours. I just wanted to give you so for all the information, if you want to consider going with us on what I call a vacation with a purpose, you can go to this website, check out the cost, the itinerary, and everything. But we got about 15 seats left on our 10 to 15 seats left on our June DC Mount Vernon tour. Just go to Spiritual Heritage Tours with an S.com. Spiritual Heritage Tours with an S.com. And all the information is there if you want to go in June or you want to go with us in September. SpiritualHeritageTours.com. Yes, sir.
Also, if you come, you'll get to taste peanut butter soup.
Duly noted. Virginia peanut butter soup, which you
butter.
found amazing, right?
Yes, that's right.
In Williamsburg, you get that, or Jamestown, that area, you get peanut. You ever had peanut butter soup, Ray?
I never even heard of it. What's it like, Wesley?
It's
I like it. Wesley doesn't like it.
Yeah, it's literally like you took Jif peanut butter and you put it in the microwave for about 2 minutes, and that's it.
Yeah.
You're drinking liquid peanut butter.
Peanut butter. That's what it is.
Peanut butter soup.
I don't know
if it's native to just Virginia or if they got it in other parts of the country. But
yeah,
but
that was interesting.
Steve, you ever had peanut butter soup?
No, but I'm looking it up on my New York Times menu app to see if they've got it.
I think. Anyway,
I just remember that being one of the things that it was on the menu.
I like it. You didn't care for it, right?
I didn't care for it. I ended up going with a clam chowder, I believe. Clam chowder made the most sense to me between the two after trying the peanut butter.
Yeah.
Well, the closest the New York Times culinary app comes to this is spicy peanut and pumpkin soup.
No, not it. But
no, that's not it. But yeah,
that's the closest.
Peanut butter soup. You can sure get it there in Williamsburg.
That's right.
Let's see. All right, what's your next story, Steve?
It's kind of related to the last story we were talking about. You know what's amazing to me is these protesters that are out putting them, chaining themselves to roads and burning.
I used to do that, but I don't know. I got too old for that.
It takes a toll on the body, doesn't it?
I got tired of it. Took up golf instead.
And that takes its own toll.
It's a different toll. It's
a different toll. Yeah. Well, anyway, these guys I just have to have this feeling that if you had asked them on January 6th where the Gaza Strip was, they couldn't have found it if you spotted them a map of Israel.
Right.
But now they're willing to stand in front of traffic for it and, shouting death to Israel, death to the United States. One such activist is a young lady named Riddhi Patel, R-I-D-D-H-I, Riddhi Patel. And she lives in Bakersfield, California. She went to the Bakersfield City Council. She wanted a resolution to call for a ceasefire in Israel and Gaza. And this is what she had to say to the Bakersfield City Council. Cut 9.
Hi there, my name is Riddhi Patel. I'm here to speak in support of the City Council introducing a ceasefire resolution, specifically the one United Liberation Front has drafted. I don't have faith that you'll do this. You guys are all horrible human beings, and Jesus probably would have killed you himself. And the thing is, though, it's very clear to me as someone who's been an organizer for the past couple of years that none of you care because you guys don't care about anything happening in Palestine or any other country where oppression occurs because you don't care about the oppression occurring here. And when the city budget comes up this summer, I know that you guys will vote to increase police funding. And I understand that you guys are all horrible people. And while you guys parade Gandhi around, as a Hindu holiday called Chaitra Navratri starts off this week, I remind you that these holidays that we practice, that other people in the global south practice, believe in violent revolution against their oppressors. And I hope one day somebody brings the guillotine and kills all of you.
Well, I had to cut it off there because the next word.
Cut it off there. I see what you did.
Right? Well, she's.
Did you see what you did?
Yeah.
No, he didn't see what he did.
Well, yes, I didn't. But
cut it off there.
Yeah.
Inappropriate, Steve.
She is facing 18 felony counts. After a little bit after that, she said she threatened to go to their houses and murder them. She is facing 18 felony counts now.
Okay, so tomorrow we'll be covering the Second Amendment. It is much needed.
I think they've got an airtight case on that one. Yeah. That video is pretty clear.
She needs to read How to Win Friends and Influence People.
That's
not it.
Where was that?
Bakersfield, California.
Yeah, so she
That's a pretty conservative place.
It is.
It's fairly conservative, yeah.
Compared to the rest of California.
Yeah, it's in the Central Valley.
We're not going to find an email from her in our inspirational email box.
No.
Any inspirational.
Hers is going straight to Tony.
That's right.
I got 2 words to describe her. Whacked and out.
Or doodle.
Whacked out or whack-a-doodle.
Yeah,
That's three
words.
A whack-a-doodle, a left-wing whack-a-doodle. All right, we'll be see you tomorrow, everybody.
We live in a day when America's families are under attack like never before.
Buddy Smith